this is Bobby, and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So I believe yesterday I reported that Canelo Alvarez was in negotiations with Golovkin for a third fight May 4th. And now today we find out, after Golden Boy reaching out to Gennady Golovkin, according to Eric Gomez, Golden Boy's Eric Gomez, Golovkin does not want a third fight with Canelo Alvarez. Matter of fact, let me quote exactly what Gomez had to say. Quote, "Looks like he does not want Bomba Day Canelo anymore. Prefers easy fights as before. We will see, friends." End quote. Now, what he just said right there, it could be interpreted many different ways. This could mean that Gennady Golovkin, he realized that second fight with Canelo Alvarez was more difficult than he anticipated, and he doesn't want to risk losing a third fight against Canelo. Because if he loses to Canelo in a third fight with no controversy, his career is almost over. Because if he loses to Canelo, we know he's not going to follow that loss fighting Jermall Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, or giving Danny Jacobs the rematch that he deserves. We know he's not going to go that route. I don't even think he'll fight BJ Saunders. So where does he go from there? I told you guys before this, I told you a couple weeks ago, there are no more easy fights for Gennady Golovkin. And when I say there's no more easy fights, of course he can find an easy opponent, but what I mean is he's going to get a lot of backlash if he avoids all of the top middleweights and he goes out and he fights Vanes Martirosyan or he fights Liam Smith. Gennady Golovkin is already the most overrated fighter of this generation. And if he goes the route that I just laid out for you guys, then that further confirms that. So this is the reason why I've been telling you guys for a long time, ever since Golovkin lost to Canelo Alvarez, that he is in a very, very tough position right now. He's in a tough spot right now. I don't see where he goes from here. I don't see him beating Canelo Alvarez in the third fight. I don't. Matter of fact, I believe if Canelo didn't slow down in that fight, he had a very good chance of stopping Gennady Golovkin. Even Roy Jones said during the fight, he said around the 4th or the 5th round, he said Golovkin is fading quick right now because he's not used to fighting that way. He wasn't used to having someone back him up. And I told you guys this, years I've been telling you guys this. I told you the way you beat Gennady Golovkin is to stay close to him and back him up. Willie Monroe did that to Triple G, but he only had 6 knockouts. Because Gennady Golovkin is not as comfortable fighting on his back foot. Matter of fact, Oscar De La Hoya, he said the exact same thing years ago. He said he cannot fight going backwards. Don't get me wrong, Golovkin, he can fight going backwards. He's just not as comfortable doing it. Because what kept him in that fight was his great jab. Golovkin does have a great jab, and that's what kept him in that fight. Now, going back to what Eric Gomez said about Golovkin not wanting the fight, once again, this could mean that it's true. Golovkin really doesn't want this fight, or it could also mean that Golden Boy, they lowball Gennady Golovkin, and that's the reason why he's not taking the fight. But I don't know about that, because this is the first time I heard Golden Boy say Golovkin doesn't want the fight. He just wants easy fights. Because I feel that if this was a money issue, Golden Boy would have said that Golovkin, he's asking for too much money. But they didn't even mention money. They just said he doesn't want the fight. And since his loss to Canelo, I don't recall hearing Golovkin say, I want a third fight with Canelo. So I don't know, guys. I'm starting to think maybe Gennady Golovkin is a little traumatized from that second fight. Don't get me wrong, the fight was very competitive, and the fight could have went either way. It could have went either way. But if Golovkin would have took the fight, I wouldn't have said that Canelo was robbed, and I'm certainly not going to say that Golovkin got robbed, because he didn't get robbed in that rematch. Let me tell you something. When you have Roy Jones saying that Golovkin is fading fast, when you have Max Kellerman saying that Golovkin is losing the fight, when you have Golovkin's trainer, Abel Sanchez, whispering in Golovkin's ear and telling him after the 8th round he's losing the fight. And then after the fight, in interviews that I actually did with Abel Sanchez, Abel admitted that he didn't even believe his fighter Gennady Golovkin won the fight. When have you ever heard that many people say things like that about a fighter that was supposedly robbed? You never hear that. You would never hear it. When a fighter is robbed, almost everyone says he won the fight decisively, and they will explain why he won the fight. When Pernell Whitaker fought against Chavez, there was no one saying that Pernell Whitaker was losing the fight, he's fading quickly, he's down on the scorecards. We didn't hear that from Pernell Whitaker's trainer. We didn't hear that from anyone that night. It was unanimous that Pernell Whitaker had won the fight. By the second half of that fight, the commentators were praising Pernell Whitaker. They were praising him as if he won the fight already. So once again, with Eric Gomez claiming that Gennady Golovkin doesn't want this fight, there's a very good chance that that could be true. Or once again, they could still be negotiating, because at the end of what he said, he did say, "We'll see, my friends." He said, "We'll see." That sounds as if they're still trying to get Golovkin to take the fight. Now remember, Eddie Hearn also reached out to Gennady Golovkin because he wanted to put Golovkin in there with Caleb Smith. And we heard nothing from Gennady Golovkin's team, which implies they didn't want that fight. This whole Canelo-Golovkin negotiation situation is starting to sound a lot like the Eddie Hearn-Caleb Smith situation. Golden Boy reaches out to Golovkin, pretty sure that Golovkin wants to fight next, and all of a sudden they get surprised and they find out that Golovkin is not in too much of a hurry to take the fight. But we'll see what's going to happen. I mean, we already know, honestly, not too many people really want to see Canelo versus Golovkin a third time. It doesn't make any sense. No one wants to keep seeing the same movie over and over and over again. The way you make a Canelo versus Golovkin third fight even bigger is if both fighters fight another top middleweight. They both win and then they fight against each other. That's what would make a third fight bigger. Once again, if Golovkin were to fight against Charlo and Canelo were to fight against Danny Jacobs, and let's just say hypothetically both of them win, then the third fight would make all the sense in the world. It's just like the NBA and the NFL. You know, you may have teams play against each other every season, in the Super Bowl, in the playoffs, but they have to qualify, they have to reach a certain level to play against each other, if you understand what I mean. My point is, no one would care, no one would have a problem if the same two teams kept playing against each other every season in the Super Bowl or the finals. You know why? Because fans would know that both teams earned the right to play in the Super Bowl against each other. When I tell you guys that Gennady Golovkin is the most overrated fighter of this generation, you guys have to understand what the definition of overrated is. First of all, even Jim Lampley, who is Gennady Golovkin's biggest fan, he said that if Gennady Golovkin loses to Canelo Alvarez, his career, his entire career, will be looked at as a joke. What Jim Lampley just said right there was an admission that even he believes if Golovkin loses to Canelo Alvarez, he will be looked at as the most overrated fighter of this generation. That's exactly what your career being a joke means. And this is the reason why a lot of these Golovkin fans, they have no choice but to say Golovkin was robbed. Because if they admit that he lost, then they would have to admit that Gennady Golovkin is the most overrated fighter of this generation. And they're never going to admit that, no matter what Gennady Golovkin does. But they don't have to admit it, because action speaks louder than words. We're seeing his career in the making right now. But once again, let me educate these fans and give you the complete definition of what overrated means, or even overhyped, whichever word you want to use. Because a lot of these decafs, they just use words because they hear other people using the words, and then they keep using it to discredit fighters that they don't like, not even understanding the definition of the word. When it comes to Gennady Golovkin, he is the exact definition of overrated. Overrated simply means You rate a fighter higher than what they deserve to be rated. So when ESPN says that Gennady Golovkin is top 25, the greatest fighter in the last 25 years, that is overrating him. When ESPN comes back and then they say he is number 2, the greatest middleweight in the world in the last 25 years, that is overrating Gennady Golovkin. Because they rated Gennady Golovkin over fighters like Roy Jones, Kelly Pavlik, Jermaine Taylor. I mean, the funny thing is they have Gennady Golovkin ranked right behind Bernard Hopkins. Coincidentally, Jermaine Taylor, he beat Bernard Hopkins twice. And then Kelly Pavlik, he beat Jermaine Taylor twice. And yet they rank Gennady Golovkin higher than both of those fighters. Now, let's just talk about Roy Jones alone. Roy Jones, you have to understand, this man beat Bernard Hopkins when Bernard Hopkins was undefeated, right? And then he completely dominated James Toney, who was considered pound for pound #1, the best fighter in the world when he beat him. He did all this at middleweight. Not even to mention all his other accomplishments. But just those 2 fights alone, how could you possibly have Golovkin rated above Roy Jones Jr.? That's what makes Gennady Golovkin the most overrated fighter of this generation, because of how you guys have rated him. See, I hear some of these decaps, they say, oh, that's BS. Jermall Charlo is the most overrated, etc., etc. Once again, you decaps do not think with logic. You guys think with emotion. You guys think with hate and pride. In order for Charlo to be the most overrated, in order for Adrian Broner to be the most overrated, people would have to rate him high. People would have to overrate him. Do you guys understand? People would have to say that Jermall Charlo is pound for pound #1, the best fighter in the world. They would have to say that he's top 25, right behind Bernard Hopkins, is the greatest middleweight in the world. Then you could say, oh, he's overrated. He's not as good as these people are saying he is. No one has said that about Charlo. Only thing that fans have said about Charlo is, when is he going to get his shot, since he is Canelo's mandatory? When is he going to get his shot, since he is Golovkin's mandatory? When Golovkin had the belt. That's not overrating him. That's saying, I want to see this fight. No one ever said that Adrian Broner was pound for pound the best fighter in the world. You guys see my point? I mean, I could use tons of examples, but I think you guys get it. So anyway, man, you know, I'm hoping that Golovkin does turn this fight down so we can see some new fights, because fans don't want to see this fight. I know there's one demographic of fans that want to see this fight, but I'm talking about boxing fans. I'm not talking about these emotional pride fans that just pray that Canelo or Gennady Golovkin doesn't get in the ring with a black fighter that might beat him. And once again, I say these things, guys, because these are the messages that these fans are leaving in the comment section. They're real bold today. They're coming out and they're straight saying it. Let those black fighters fight against each other. They don't deserve to fight against Canelo or Gennady Golovkin. They should all fight against each other first. That's what some of these racist fans are saying in the comment section. Some of these fans are terrified that Canelo or Golovkin might lose to a Charlo, a Andre, a Danny Jacobs, etc., etc. Now, some of them are saying that they'll stomach a Danny Jacobs fight because they believe that Danny Jacobs is the easiest or the weakest link out of the dangerous fighters like Andre, Charlo, and everyone else. At the end of the day, real boxing fans don't want to see Canelo versus Golovkin next. They want to see new fights. They want to see Canelo versus, or we rather, want to see Canelo versus Charlo, Canelo versus Andre, Canelo versus BJ Saunders, Canelo versus Danny Jacobs. These are the most meaningful fights. So let's see what Gennady Golovkin decides to do. I had some of the fans ask me, some of the fans were saying, hey Dante, I thought the WBC was ordering Gennady Golovkin to fight Charlo to get a Canelo fight. And it's true, the WBC did order Golovkin to fight Charlo to get a Canelo fight. But if Golovkin refuses to fight Charlo and Canelo decides he wants to fight Golovkin right now, then that overrules what the WBC has ordered Gennady Golovkin to do. Because a champion, he could choose to fight whoever he wants. Now, the only problem right now is Charlo is his mandatory. And that is something we really need to look into, because there's no way that Canelo Alvarez should be able to prolong this Charlo fight as long as he has. Eventually, Charlo is going to have to probably take Canelo Alvarez to court, or take the WBC to court and force Canelo Alvarez to either get in the ring or give up his belt. I know these Canelo Alvarez fans, they are so afraid that Golovkin may lose to Charlo, because that's all that means. When you see these comments, oh, come on, he lost his last fight. If you were hearing the whole boxing world say that, then you could say, oh, okay, well, maybe they really believe that. But when you are only hearing this from the most racist fans on the internet, I don't even take those guys serious. I don't take any of those comments serious, because they're supposed to say that. You know that these fans have never a day in their life ever said that the black fighter was robbed in a close fight against a non-black fighter. You ain't gonna find no comments on the internet with these same fans saying that. That's the reason why those fans have no credibility. Even with Jermall Charlo's performance against Matt Karloff, Jermall is still pumping fear into the heart of many fans, trying to protect Canelo and Gennady Golovkin. That ain't no damn excuse for why you don't want to see the fight because you think Charlo looked bad in this last fight. If Charlo looked bad in this last fight, that's even more of a reason for you guys to push for the fight. That's more of a reason for Canelo and Golovkin to take the fight, because that means they see something. As Sugar Ray Leonard said when he was watching a Marvin Hagler fight, when he decided to fight Marvin Hagler, he said, I see something. So if you see something, why wouldn't you take advantage of it? Charlo is still undefeated. You could be the first person to officially put a blemish on his record. Why would you say, I see flaws, but oh no, I don't want to get in the ring with him? Or even the fans. Why would you say, I seen flaws? Charlo is not as good as I thought he was. He's overhyped. He's this and he's that. Canelo can beat him. Golovkin can beat him. Oh no, but I don't want them to fight him. You will never hear an Errol Spence fan say something like that if he had some undefeated Canelo type of opponent that was his mandatory. It wouldn't matter if it was a Kovalev type of opponent, if it was a Gennady Golovkin type of opponent. And if they were in the same situation as Charlo right now, where they just had a tough fight while they were waiting to get an Errol Spence fight, you would never hear fans say, oh, no, we don't want to see the fight. He doesn't deserve to fight against Errol Spence. No, they would push for the fight because they would have confidence that Errol Spence would beat those guys. But these Canelo fans and these Golovkin fans, they don't have confidence because they know deep down that there's a good chance that they could lose to a fighter on the coincidental list. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. Oh, but before I do, let me make this clear one more time. When we say we want to see Golovkin versus Charlo, BJ Saunders, Andrade, Danny Jacobs, we want to see Golovkin versus these guys. We want to see Canelo versus these guys. When we say this, we're not saying this just because we believe that Charlo is going to beat this guy and that's the only reason we want to watch it, or Danny Jacobs is going to beat this guy. No, regardless who wins the fight, we want to see the best fight the best. This is what people want to see in every sport. You want to see the best teams play against the best. You want a conclusion at the end of the season, right? The finals, the Super Bowl, the gold medal match. This is what we want at the end of the day. Because when we watch boxing Olympics, we know that USA doesn't have the best boxing team in the Olympics, but we're still going to watch it. We're still going to watch the gold medal match and all the other matches, right? Win or lose. But once again, these decafs, these Canelo fans, they don't think that way. They look at things like, if my guy is going to lose, or if there's a good chance that he can lose, we don't want to see the fight. We pray that our guy doesn't have to fight this guy or that guy. That's not the way boxing fans think. That's the way decafs think. All right, y'all, that's all I got. I'm on to the next one.